on right now? Because you're filming something, right? So what's your current project, which makes you unable to, you know, come down to NYC?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first off, I want to just, thank you for showing Sin País and having me, and apologize for not being able to be there. But yeah, I was in NYC the week before last, launching my new project, which is called Immigrant Nation. So kind of coming out of Sin País, which is a traditional short documentary that you just watched. I kind of wanted to do a project that's more inclusive and that kind of gets at the big idea that we all have an immigrant history, an immigrant story that's part of us, who we are, whether it's like a year ago you or your family came here, or a family member came here, etc. Or in my case, like 110 years ago in 1903, my great grandmother came. So really just trying to tie the pieces together, that this isn't like a story that is often kind of couched in the U.S.-Mexico border, or like often talked about with words like illegal and legal and documented, undocumented, and alien, etc. This story is our story. It's the story of the country. It's a story of our communities and culture, etc. So yeah, I wanted to make a project that's inclusive in that way, and decided to do a series of short films about different immigrant stories across the country. Make this web platform that we just launched 2 weeks ago on Ellis Island, where you can create and share your own immigrant story and kind of see how your story fits into the history of immigration over the past 200 years to the U.S. And then like the live events is a big piece of it. So we did 2 days on Ellis Island, kind of took over their lobby, and then we did a launch party in Chinatown, and then did an event at the Tribeca Film Festival at their interactive day last Saturday. So yeah, that's a bit about the new project, and yeah, it'd be great if you could pass on the link to the crowd and get people to go check it out.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe we can have you, I'm trying to do a movie night every semester, so maybe we can have you back in person for a real Q&A come next semester.
That would be really cool.
All right, so on to Sin País. The first question I have is, how did this project even begin? What led you to make this movie?
Yeah, so I about 10 years ago now, I was just like not happy with the kind of the news and reporting about immigration issues, and just decided to go to the border and kind of see what the story was on the border myself. And that's how I kind of got into immigration issues myself. A lot of people ask me like, what's the deal? Why are you doing this? White guy, are you an immigrant? Are you Latino? What's the deal? And the deal is, I went to the border and befriended a mixed status family and started photographing them, and really became part of their family. And they got caught by the Border Patrol about a year into me knowing them, and I went through the immigration justice system with them, which was crazy. And all these
immigration injustice system.
That Yes. I mean, it's not only injustice, but it's just crazy. I mean, it's not like the immigration judges are frustrated and angry and like feel like they have their hands tied, while of course the people who are in that system are just incredibly just stifled by so many things that really immigration judge can't really kind of do justice, and there are immense injustices to the people in the system, and it's just a mess. And it became personal there, and then I came back to San Francisco, started a program for undocumented youth to tell their own stories, and gave them cameras and matched them with photo mentors, and then went to grad school, and when it came time to make my thesis film, these were and still are issues that are of utmost importance to me. So I really wanted to make a film that just showed the human side of deportation. Like 400,000 people deported every year. Last year, like 370-ish thousand people.
Yeah.
And this is a story of just 2. So yeah.
How did you meet them?
They were fighting for a Senate bill, like a private bill from Senator Feinstein or Boxer in California was really the only way that would stop their deportation. So there were some news stories about them out there, and not huge ones, but smaller ones, and I saw them in the news, and it was at the time when I was doing research trying to find a family. So I met the Mejia family about 2 weeks before they were deported. Came into their life, and their whole, their house was like in boxes. And I mean, in addition to being ripped apart from your family, imagine also moving 3,000 miles away to a different country.
Right.
Add that on top of everything else. So yeah, I met them 2 weeks before and just kind of went in their living room, and the whole family came around, and I was just honest with what I thought I wanted to do with the film, and really clear that if they did get deported, which I did not want, but if it did happen, I would definitely go to Guatemala and kind of tell the story on the other side of the border, which is a story very often not told. What is life like for people before they come here or when they get deported back? And I thought that was another really crucial kind of piece, and the family understood, and they sometimes people don't. It takes a while for them to understand like what you're doing as a filmmaker in these situations, but they got it immediately, and they knew that they were having a huge injustice done to them, and they wanted the world to know about it, even if it was really painful throughout that whole process.
And I wanted to ask, because it wasn't made clear in the film, what was the raid for?
So ICE came to the Immigration's Customs Enforcement, like La Migra, came at 5 in the morning, and they were looking for one of their cousins who had the same last name. And oddly enough, that cousin actually had legalized and was already a permanent resident at that time. And Sam, the dad, was getting ready to go to work. It was early, 6 a.m.-ish or something in the morning. And, the police, immigration can't come in your house if the door is shut. They have to have a warrant. And in this case, they didn't have a warrant. But Sam was going in and out, and he left the door just like a crack open. So basically, they came and they pushed the door open and ran in the house, with like full riot gear and shotguns, etc.
And so by happenstance, right, just by accident, they were able to get in and conduct this raid. But the point I was going after, because it didn't seem to me that they were engaging in any criminality. I mean, they seemed like a really decent family. They were living the American dream. They were in the United States at that time for over a decade. And I think that needs to be clear, because many people get deported. Most people who get deported are for non-criminal violations, right? So you hear this rhetoric, oh, we're getting rid of these criminal, quote-unquote, aliens. And I mean, the story of Sam and his family is a perfect example of how, you have very decent, law-abiding people getting deported for technicalities, right? They weren't even after him. And they were able to effectuate a deportation and practically destroy a family because of it, right? And I just wanted to make that clear, right? Because they did not engage in any criminal act.
They didn't. I mean, the only criminal act is like crossing the border not at a checkpoint, which
and that's not
right. So that's
into legalese, but yeah.
Right. Well, it's important. Legalese is important, especially for this screening. So it is like a misdemeanor infraction crossing the border not at a checkpoint, and it's essentially equivalent, kind of like to a traffic ticket. And it's not. And then it's really important to know that it's not a criminal offense to be here in the United States without documentation. It's a civil offense, but it's not a criminal offense. Right. So actually, technically, the whole kind of like conversation about calling people illegal aliens and using kind of illegal as a word to connect to people who are here undocumented, it's actually factually incorrect. So that's like another bigger semantic, cultural, social, societal discussion. But and
the audience is aware, right, audience? And hopefully they'll clap after I say that.
Okay. Yeah, but that's something that happens often, is that people get picked up when in fact immigration was looking for someone else. It's they're looking for someone, they can't find them, and then they say like, hey, where are your papers? So there's a lot of complaints by immigrant communities that there's, essentially racial profiling going on in a lot of different circumstances where ICE knows where there's a heavily immigrant, like populated community, and they assume that there are a lot of people there without papers, and then they kind of target that community with traffic stops, with, just, going door to door sometimes, etc. So.
And another thing I wanted to ask was, the film is, including credits and extras, it's just about 30 minutes, maybe a little more. How were you able to condense this story? I mean, how hard was it for you to, put things on the cutting room floor, like what they say?
It was really hard, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of power in kind of the brevity of it, because a lot of people, especially educators and people in general, often don't have 90 minutes to sit down and watch a film. Our time is precious. We're extremely busy, and especially educators. I mean, if you have a 50-minute class period as a teacher, like, what are you going to do with a 90-minute movie? Which is why feature films make kind of like education modules, etc. But it was difficult to cut out so much of the film, but just to try to kind of include the essence of the story. And kind of the most difficult part of making the film actually was kind of making like the emotional trajectory.
Yeah.
Because it is so heart-wrenchingly sad. I mean, like the scene at the airport, I mean, driving home from the airport after that happened, that was like one of the most soul-crushing, saddest experiences I've ever had. And like not making a film that basically makes people cry for 20 minutes straight was my task, because you can't do that. Nobody would watch the film, and that wouldn't be true to the Mejia family, because they're really funny and they're lighthearted and they're like joking and trying to keep their spirits up even through these incredibly difficult times. So I'm a pescatarian. I don't eat meat, so Sam would always be joking, trying to like force carne asada and beef on me. And even in the midst of all this intense emotional hardship, they were still trying to be optimistic, and I had to create that flow of kind of like sadness and happiness, or a little bit of levity, and it was tough to kind of make it a 20-minute piece, but
Yeah.
but I think it benefited from that.
Oh, I didn't want the movie to end. I mean, from beginning, I was crying, and then I didn't want it to end. I have two more questions, and then I can let you go. The first of the last two are, number one, where are they now?
Good question. So, as you saw, the end of the film, kind of Sam and Alita were fighting to appeal their deportation, and Gilbert and Helen were here kind of pursuing their education. And 2 days after I finished the film, this is actually in 2010, the governmental agencies were deciding about their humanitarian parole application. And actually, the government were the first people ever to see Sin País. I finished it and put it on Vimeo with a password-protected link and sent it to the lawyer, Mejia's lawyer, and then they sent it to the government. And we saw that they watched it because they were the only people with the link. And then, who knows why the government does what they do sometimes, but they decided to let Sam and Alita come back about 9 months after they were deported. They came back on a temporary humanitarian parole visa, which in 30 years of practicing law, the lawyer that represented them had never seen. It's incredibly unprecedented. But they let them come back to the U.S. based on the hardship that the deportation created on the U.S. citizen daughters. So this visa was temporary, and they had to reapply. So every year we all write letters of recommendation, and they have gotten it extended 6 months, and then extended a year. And the family was together and kind of trying to get back to normal. They had work permits, like with their humanitarian parole, so they can work legally for the first time ever in the U.S. And And then they reapplied about 2 months ago, and they had their reapplication extension denied. So the Obama administration has made it like glaringly clear that they want to go after like priority targets in terms of deportations, and not deport people exactly like Sam and Alita. So the lawyer was shocked that they didn't get an extension, and the family, at this point they've been through this before, and they're obviously not happy about it, and might have to go kind of enter into another kind of stage of like fighting to be here again. But everyone's relatively uh, confident that they won't get deported back again, but they're entering into another kind of like phase of fighting to get some kind of even temporary legal status for the parents.
Wow. I didn't expect to hear that.
Yeah.
And my thoughts are with them, and my prayers too. And the last question, what's the message you want the audience to get? You as the filmmaker and as a quasi-activist at least, right? You're a filmmaker first, but I would say you're an activist too, right? What's your message?
What's my message? I think, well, one is kind of a big piece of telling the story is really kind of getting at the issue of mixed status families, and that we kind of talk about, and like those undocumented people, those illegal people, those unauthorized immigrants, whatever, and we throw out numbers, etc., numbers of deportations, but just a realization that immigrant communities have mixed status families, and people who are undocumented are not kind of like by themselves somewhere in a void, in a vortex. Like the undocumented community is part of a much huger, much wider community filled with many, 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 many U.S. citizens and people and residents and people in all kinds of different kind of levels of status. And when you talk about kind of like 12 million, 11 million undocumented people, you're talking about, exponentially kind of larger numbers of people who are affected by the fact that those 11 million people don't have status. And then to like exponentially grow out even more, immigrants, whether you're documented or not, are just recent immigrants who have come here themselves, are part of our lives everywhere we go. In New York, you see that and you feel that because New York is this, amazingly crazy diverse place. But in a lot of parts of the country, you don't really feel that. And, even in San Francisco, you go to a fancy restaurant, etc., and you don't think that the people who, like the sous chefs in the back of the kitchen, are from like Jalisco or Michoacan or whatever, and they have an amazing immigrant story and have fought so hard to get here and are most likely sending money back to their family who need their support to survive. We don't think about these things, and as we go through life often, and hopefully just kind of like humanizing the story of this family that is dealing with these incredible issues of deportation, but also thinking about them as, Gilbert's like wants to be an interior designer, and Sam is like an amazingly brilliant contractor, like a carpenter. And Elida kind of takes care of people kind of as they are born and as they are dying, our very oldest and our very youngest. And Helen is like an up-and-coming, freshman at San Jose State University and is going to be a total rock star in whatever she does. So if there's anything, just kind of thinking about, thinking about immigration issues in this kind of like political, et cetera way, and kind of bringing that to like the human level and the level that really connects to all these facets of our communities. So that's kind of a lot to ask, but
no, not at all. It's not a lot to ask at all. Thank you so much for the interview, for allowing us to show the movie. And we have a large immigrant presence over at John Jay, CUNY in general, but in particular John Jay. The John Jay Dreamers Club is represented in the audience today. We have many students who are undocumented, and they're bold enough and courageous enough to identify themselves and fight for rights. So I'm sure, to the whole audience, your movie is an inspiration, and I really thank you for allowing us to see it.
Well, thank you so much for watching the film and for having this conversation. We just need to we need to have this conversation and talk about it, even if it's hard to talk about, and even if you know, sometimes it raises contentious issues, etc. We need to think about it and talk about it for things to change. So thank you for having this event.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
All right, wait, don't hang up. That's how I wanted to end, but now let's figure out how do we get this from YouTube? How do I get this so that I can actually show it?
I'm gonna stop the broadcast now, and then it'll be there, hopefully.
Okay. Let's see. All right, go.